Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Moby Dick Book Club. And I'm happy to have everybody here. We are covering Parker's Back, and I'll just give you guys a little bit of insight into how this club is being run. Is I've read all of these short stories probably a decade ago, and I'm just kind of picking the ones that I remember, and the line that I remembered from this particular one was the fact that Parker and his wife didn't get married in a church because his wife thought that churches were idolatrous. And that line has stuck with me for well over a decade now. So that's why we read it again today. But as it turns out, there was a lot of details that I had forgotten about how the book went. So we've got Parker. Parker was always a bit of had trouble fitting in, but he saw a man with tattoos at the age of 14, and he decided that that was the best thing that he had ever seen in his life, and so he decided that he wanted to go get some tattoos and went and got his first tattoo. Dropped out of school, dropped out of trade school, joined the Navy, which, if you're in the market for tattoos, is the place to be. Plenty of sailors end up with very painted bodies. He gets all sorts of tattoos from all over the place. He does not get an honorable discharge from the Navy. He just kind of goes AWOL, gets 9 months in the brig, and returns to probably Georgia, where most of these stories are going to take place, and starts working odd jobs. He meets he meets Sarah, and very interesting relationship between them. He was just trying to sell apples, and then he just keeps on coming back. He doesn't know why. He doesn't know why anybody would ever marry this girl. Just keeps on coming back. And she says, look, if you want me, you have to get married. And so that was like the whole reason that he married her. We pick up, he's increasingly dissatisfied with his life. He's got this restlessness in him, and he decides that he wants to go get another tattoo, but he wants to get a tattoo that his wife will appreciate. He thinks about a Bible verse, but he says, I already have a Bible. I don't need another more Bible verses. Um, and so he just thinks about it, thinks about it. He ends up crashing a tractor. I guess he like fell asleep or something. We could talk about that. And then while he was at his job, and he decided to go get a big tattoo of an image of God, he says. And the tattoo artist is like, okay, well, here's images of Christ. You go pick one. And instead of picking a familiar to the South image, he goes with a Byzantine image and gets that tattooed all on his back. And as it turns out, his wife, who founds churches idolatrous, uh, doesn't appreciate the tattoo and is more angry at him that they need to go and figure out how to pay off the old tractor that had gotten burned down. But all of a sudden, Parker is much more at peace and at ease now that his entire body is covered with tattoos. Is there anything that you think is salient that is missing from my very brief plot synopsis there?
I think it was pretty solid synopsis. I don't know. I mean, I'd love to get down into the details. I mean, there's so much humor in this one. Like right out of the gate, like first paragraph, it's really good. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like
I thought this would be a nice change of pace after the last book club with all of the murder, where things are mostly just kind of funny. Um,
in a certain sense, my heart was actually more broken at the end of this one than the entire family getting shot. But not for gravity, but it's just there's something about she really like twists the knife on at in the end of this one. I don't want to jump
mhm,
ahead, but
mhm.
she kind of showed some mercy to the reader by doing a lot of things off screen, so to speak, in the previous one, whereas this one was very was a lot more kind of visceral. But um, I just want to mention, just straight out of the gate, the first paragraph, it says she was pregnant, and pregnant women were not his favorite kind. Nevertheless, he stayed as if she had him conjured. he was puzzled and ashamed of himself. It's like that's the only description I needed of Parker, and I was not. I was not. I could have just based on that, and just the rest of the story is just that's pretty much him.
Yeah, yeah, he has this continual restlessness about him, right? And so it's like every time he starts feeling restless and starts feeling anxious, he goes and he gets another tattoo, and that makes him, feel better about himself for a while. Doesn't seem like he got anything on his face or on his hands, because there's parts where says that his wife Sarah Ruth only liked him when he had a shirt and pants on, with all those tattoos covered up. So it seems like he didn't quite go for the face tattoos, but I should think
I
that.
sorry, I think the face and hand tattoos, they used to be super taboo. Like people used to not get them at all, I think. Right? But
And it
now they're
was
really
better. It
popular.
was better when things were like that. Yes,
Hmm.
I'll just be, like you can get away with a lot if you could just like put on a long sleeve shirt and nobody knows you're all inked up, right? But the second you put it on your face, that's like you've gone and made a decision right there. So yeah, there were places that apparently even Mr. Tattoo Enthusiast himself would not get the tattoos on. Um,
I liked him first meeting his lovely future wife there. Um, says that he had an extra sense that told him when there was a woman nearby watching him. And then he said, it says a woman was either nearby beyond a clump of honeysuckle or in the house watching him out the window. It's just everything about this guy is just so strange. Like he's got these unusual abilities, and absolutely hates working except for like he lives only for new tattoos, and
yeah, yeah,
it's like Vanity the man. It's
yeah.
just
It's really interesting, right? The relationship between them, because he's got the sense that usually the women he wants are very impressed by his tattoos, and he can kind of like dazzle them in with the tattoos. And the way he describes it, at least his perception of it, is that like she really actually likes the tattoos, but like pretends to hate them. And all of these things that she pretends to hate, she actually like really secretly likes, like booze and gambling and swearing, but she won't admit to liking them, um, which could certainly happen. Especially if you want to project a certain sort of image, you'll just sit there and pretend that you are something that maybe you're not.
Yeah, and once he gets into this relationship with Sarah, uh, he he can kind of try to convert her into his ways, or he can try to submit to her way of life, or like some kind of compromise, or like kind of I don't know synthesis or something, which maybe was like the tattoo that he was trying to get. It's like kind of bridging both worlds in some sense. But it's a complicated place to be in because they contrast really heavily,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
yeah, he just kind of fell into that relationship.
Well, frankly, it seems to me like most of the time, Miss Sarah Ruth has the upper hand.
Yeah.
Like he can't keep away with her from her, and like he's like kind of upset that she has this kind of power over him. And but it's just like, well, what are you gonna do, right? Can't live with him, can't live without him. Maybe you can, but never mind that. uh yeah, yeah,
He
so
can't.
this he can't, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
he's very captured by his passions, it seems, right?
Mhm,
Like it's just
mhm.
it's all desire, passion, whim of the moment. Yeah. It's a very mysterious. He's a mysterious character. I don't because it's told from his perspective.
Mhm,
We don't get a lot of contrast on what he's actually like.
mhm. I mean, when he gets that tattoo, right? He tries to go back to that bar and he tries to get a few drinks, and all his buddies are like, "Hey, let's see the new tattoo." And they're like, "Oh, hey, there's Parker. He's done it again. Another wild tattoo. Look at this." And then like he's trying to say, "Oh, that was just a joke." Like, well, why aren't you laughing then? Because he's in a very like the way Flannery is writing about it is like the whole. So you have the incident where he's out mowing the hay and he falls asleep, or he has a vision. Like, it's kind of unclear what exactly, or he just passes out. Maybe he's dehydrated. It is the South after all. Um, and then he had this growing restlessness that he would normally cure by going to get another tattoo, and he elects not to get another tattoo, or he hasn't had an opportunity. He doesn't know what to do and what to put on there. And then it's after this moment of crashing the old lady's tractor, and his shoes being burnt. That motif comes up over and over again, that he goes and decides to get his entire tattoo, his entire back tattooed with that image, but that's behind Gustav's right now. Um, and
That's
he
right.
insists
Yeah,
that
yeah.
it be the whole thing, right? Not just like the face and the halo, but he gets the whole thing like faithfully recreated on his back for 20
Yeah,
bucks. I mean, that's a great deal.
that is a great deal. I couldn't believe it. I was just reading it, and I have this picture that was gifted to me, and when it said the Byzantine Christ with this like piercing gaze, or however it was phrased, I knew it's this one. It's this
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, and so he's
Yeah, I
going
think
through like a transformation while all of this is happening, right? And so when he tries to go back to the bar with his old buddies, and just have a good time, like, he's different now, and like he can't go back there anymore.
right. Well, he knows it. Like, he knows at the time, according to him, that something's changed for the worse, and it's a transformation,
Right.
right? And it seems like what he's doing is he's thinking about the design for his back. So he's already made up his mind that he needs to get another tattoo. There's no place left. And so now he's taken his back, which is effectively sacred in this story, right? Because he's doing the tattoos for himself.
Right.
Why
Right.
should I get a tattoo on my back? I can't see it without 2 mirrors and a lot of hassle,
Right. And
which is a
he and
little
he and she talks about how he'll just go and like, examine all his different tattoos when he's got the time for it. So yeah, yeah.
right. So he's thinking about, he's getting lost in reverie thinking about what to put on his back. And that's when he crashes the tractor, and yeah, his shoes burn, and yeah, it's a strange it's strange because like he knows that something's changed, and he knows it's a negative change, but he's just going along as though, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. I mean, just these stories so far seems to also be very, very high contrast. And I like, I mean, he's got all these things that in a certain sense he's turning his back to, right? And like it's very explicit. And
Yes.
then there's certain things like it says, he that on his abdomen he had a few obscenities, but only because that seemed the proper place for them. And so there's a lot of these things where it's just everything is front. So he's like a backwards man, like just the entire thing. And so there's all this stuff that is there. And I thought also the contrast on the exterior was really interesting, that he's got when he goes to the bar to show, well, he's trying to hide the religious tattoo from the bar guys who know him
Right.
and
The
like the
only
fact that,
reason that
yeah,
they know he's got a tattoo is somebody goes and slaps him on the back, which
yeah,
was still very tender.
yeah,
And then he's like, "I got a new tattoo," and they're like, "Come on, let's." And he's like, "No, I don't want
yeah,
to show you." And they kind of just reveal.
Yeah.
And then there's this great, oh gosh, where he where it's like it gets veiled again by his shirt
Yeah.
because they're all kind of like shocked by it. They don't know what to make of it. Um, Seeing the image of Christ in the it's really funny, really funny. Um, like there's this silence, and somebody's like, "Christ."
What images of just like Christ, Jesus, all that kind of stuff, would images like that be extremely unfamiliar in the
Well,
South?
That Byzantine one in the South when
Yeah.
Flannery O'Connor, like, so churches like the Baptist churches, which are dominant in that place, tend to be rather plain and they're very light on the imagery. There might be a few you'd get like, and he mentions this. There's like things that be more familiar, like the Good Shepherd or Friend of Sinners or something like that. Um, Yeah, yeah. The Good Shepherd, forbid them not, the smiling Jesus, Jesus the physician's friend, these, but they would not have the very stylized iconographic tradition behind them. They'd be done in a very realistic style, and they wouldn't be an object for veneration. So seeing something like that on somebody's back would be quite the shock for people.
It would be scandalous because they don't they really don't like any kind of iconography whatsoever at all. To the point where the local basilica looks like a Baptist church from the outside down here. It's not the Catholic Church is not even close to the prettiest church in Colombia,
From the
which sort
outside,
of still bothers me.
from the outside. Now on the inside, it's very nice. Excellent, excellent basilica.
Yeah, yeah, the interesting effect is when you walk into it, you're like, how is this the building I saw from the outside? Like it's really different because you can see stained glass and all this stuff that just you can't see from the outside at all somehow. It's a really but they did that on purpose because they're trying to quote lay low because
Mhm.
Catholics not welcome. Let me tell you.
It was interesting. In my town, we had Easton Heritage Day because this my town was one of the few towns that the Declaration of Independence was publicly read in, like shortly after. So it was actually publicly read in the town square on the 8th of July. And so it's kind of a big thing around here. And but one of the things that was interesting is that at the time, in the entire county, which was about twice the size that it is now, there was only like 159 Catholics, and almost all of them were German. And so what wound up happening is you weren't allowed to buy property or anything like that, or be like a headmaster of a school, or really like most occupations of any authority you couldn't have. And so the church that I go to, which is the oldest one in the county, is it was founded in like the early 1800s or something like that, but it was built on Gallows Hill. That was the only land that they could get, so you would have to pass the tree they would hang people on to go to mass. And
Looks like the
but
Church of the Holy Sepulchre, huh?
mm, and so it's a very interesting sort of history. But the fact is, and a nice little contrast, I guess, is that it is the most colorful and the pointiest church on the top of the hill. That's like right there. So
Yep.
it's like, and it's the oldest standing one. So that's I absolutely love that. But it's I just thought that was really interesting. It's like, oh yeah, there's plenty of in a certain sense, there's a lot of fertilizer, I guess, for that one up there. The Something that I thought was also an interesting contrast as well is, even though the images would be scandalous, the guys in the bar like it. So they cheer him on, right? Like they're actually, and to a certain extent, maybe it's a little bit jokey, but at first they're a little surprised, but then they're like, oh, leave it to OE, he's gone religion and he's witnessing for Jesus, and it's kind of a joke. But then, people are like cheering and saying like, yeah, boy, and all these things. And it's like, it's him. He's the one that winds up getting uncomfortable. But these guys who are big into the vanity of all of the extra tattoos and the profanity and everything, like they're cheering him on, whether or not it's a novelty or whatever to them, like they're actually not scandalized. And if anything, that's where you would expect the scandal to probably come from.
Yeah. His wife has a much more negative reaction. She beats him on the back with a broom and accuses him of idolatry. And she's already unhappy with him for, just vanishing one night, not sending word as to what was going on, and then finding out that they were legally on the hook for that tractor while she's expecting a child, So the sort of things that wives get upset about with their husbands, and then you add on this idolatrous tattoo, and it's just like, what the Sam hell? And then the story ends with O.E. Parker leaning against a tree, crying like a baby. And it says her eyes hardened still more when she saw that. So it's this woman, why does he keep coming back to her? That's the question.
Yeah, he also lied about his boss. Right.
Yeah, right. He was trying to make
using
her
his boss as leverage, and now that's over.
There's
And
this
he
there's this
seems
pattern, I
to
think.
cheat everybody.
There's this kind of pattern that I also picked up on, which is that the Sarah Ruth's father isn't in the picture at the time,
right.
and
He's a preacher off in Florida.
yeah, and that's something that tends to happen, which is that that women in these situations, they often very like, they seem accessible in some way, like there's no angry dad standing over the situation, which makes it seem like a little bit easier than maybe the alternative. But at the same time, you kind of you just you see this beautiful woman, and it just seems very accessible and easy, and then you don't know what you're getting into actually, because there's a whole lot of stuff that comes with it. And if you meet the father, then that really, you meet the difficult part head on, face to face.
Right. But the funny thing is that he doesn't even think she's beautiful.
Yeah, she's
Right?
too
Like
skinny for his taste.
she's skinny. She's got this hard look in her eyes all the time. She doesn't like any of the things that he likes. Like this relationship should have gone nowhere, and yet he can't stay away. And she, she'll nag him, but she seems to be putting up with him. Until the big tattoo on the back.
Do you think maybe it's a kind of like self harm that he's doing?
It's so Mark pointed out quite rightly that he is very much driven by his whims and by his appetites, right? So this is not a man of deep reflection and of like strong principles. He's an extremely everything's very immediate to him. He just kind of like decides that he's not going to go back for his duty because every 2 years in the Navy you have the option of signing up or just like not signing up anymore. And he could have just like thought this through. He could have just decided, well, I'm kind of tired of the Navy. And you do get tired of the military from what I've heard. Like not everybody can make a career out of it. You can just put in 4 years and leave. He couldn't even do that that level of forethought. And so he gets a dishonorable discharge, which means he doesn't get the VA benefits, and he has to spend 9 months in the brig. That's a military prison in the Navy. So yeah. And so when he begins experiencing this deep attraction that on the surface doesn't have any natural explanation, he's actually completely helpless against it. There's no natural, like he's accustomed to, beautiful women with some meat on their bones, as he puts it. But like this right here is something he is not prepared to deal with, and he doesn't know how to deal with it other than like, trying to take her out onto a country road and, in his pickup. And then she says, we've got to be married. And when he doesn't like that, she throws him out of the pickup onto the ground. So she's apparently not somebody to be trifled with. She's got quite the strong will. And he's like, well, okay, if that's how it's going to be, then I guess we'll just get married.
Yeah, but
So-
I think Gustavs is right to point at it does seem like a bit of a masochistic. Yeah, it just seems that way. He seems to cause himself a lot of trouble for no reason, over and over again, and then suffer the consequences. And at no point is he like, "Well, I'm sorry I did that," which is to your point about lack of deep reflection, but also he doesn't ever try to change that aspect of him, but he talks about it constantly, like, I'm trapped by this, I'm enchanted by that, whatever conjured, right, whatever terms he's using, right, it's always his desires, his whims, his passions that are moving him in the moment. And it's, the world to him has no order at all. Right. It's just event, 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 event. And he's just narrating the events as though this is what happened. And it doesn't sound like the events are happening to him, even though he's describing events that are happening to him.
So there's a few things that I had highlighted here. For one, to your point, there's the thing where it talks about how, he would always go and get another tattoo. And it says, a huge dissatisfaction would come over him and he would go off and find another tattooist and have another space filled up. And that was every time he went and studied himself, and he would always be dissatisfied looking for some other thing. And then it said, it was as if the panther and the lion and the serpents and the eagles and the hawks had penetrated his skin and lived inside him in raging warfare. And so it's just like all of these things just kind of, he's just integrating every sort of thing that just doesn't integrate. And then there's a string of just these little highlights I did for like kind of the story of their courtship, which is like 4 things. And that, she shuts him down because his ego looks like a chicken. And it says he was not one to be outdone by anything that looked like her. And then she goes away, and his mouth remains agape for 5 minutes. And then she comes back, and it says he hated to be making up to a woman when there were children around, but it was fortunate he had brought the bushel of apples off the truck. So he's there. It's everything to try to like kind of outdo her. And then it says, yeah, she makes the comment, I ain't married yet, they belong to mama, when she talks about the children. And it says, she said as if it were only a matter of time before she would be married. So it's like, it is all from Parker's perspective, like a lot of these things. But there's a point where she asks about what OE stands for in his name. And it says, there was just a hint of flirtatiousness in her tone, and it went rapidly to Parker's head. And so it's like, there's a little bit of this of like trying to outdo her, try to get the upper hand. And then you have the line where she says, not until after we're married, because he tries to make a move on her. And he winds up flat on his back on the ground. She knocks him over, and it says he made up his mind then and there to have nothing further to do with her. Next sentence, they were married in the county ordinary's office because Sarah Ruth thought churches were idolatrous. I absolutely love that instantaneous turnaround.
Yeah. He does not have like the spiritual wherewithal to get what he says that he wants to have, but instead continues to be led by a force he does not comprehend or understand towards the story's climax there. It's like he's being dragged kicking and screaming.
And now that I've thought a little bit more about it, I think he, well, maybe it's not deliberate, but the thing with like the tractor, there's a field with one tree in it, a single tree in it, and he gets told not to run into the tree.
And he's like, lady, I can see the tree.
Obviously. then
Yeah.
what does he do? He does the one thing that he wasn't supposed to do, that he was trying not to do, apparently.
Yeah, he does the things he hates.
Yeah, but that's right after but that's right after he talks about the rocks. So he's supposed to get out and move all the rocks and set them to the end of the field, and usually she's there watching, but when he thinks he can get away with it, he just runs over the rocks and doesn't do the work. And then he crashes into the tree. Right, because he's enchanted by the sun in front, sun behind, right? There's this very simplistic way of him thinking, right? He just gets enchanted by sun in front, sun behind, sun in front, sun behind, and we're on fire. What?
Yeah, just everything about this was just way too funny. Like even the scene of the marriage, right? They're at the clerk's office, and it says the clerk, she married them from behind the iron grill of a stand-up desk, and when she finished, she said with a flourish, $3.50 until death do you part, and yanks the forms out of a machine. And then like the next paragraph, it says every morning he decided he had had enough and would not return that night. Every night he returned. Yeah. And then after that, not knowing for certain why he continued to stay with a woman who was both ugly and pregnant and no cook made him generally nervous and irritable, and he developed a little tick in the side of his face.
Bam. So what is it that's drawing O.E. Parker to Sarah Ruth? Is it something that we could name, or is it just mysterious?
No, I mean, I think it is that one-upmanship, right? Where you just there's something there, right? So he's got this preternatural sense of when he's being watched, right? And then because he says it right up front, like, whatever, there's nothing good here, right? And then it doesn't work because she challenges him like at every step. Like, I know you're lying about your hand. I know you're right. I know you're making stuff up. What are you doing? Right. And so he's constantly trying to get one over on her. And in that way, he's already caught up, right? Like you become the thing you hate, sort of a motif there for sure. Right. I would never be the kind of guy that would do this. So watch, hold my beer.
Right, and then it's kind of also going back the same direction, right? Her being against color was the more remarkable that she had married him. Sometimes he supposed that she had married him because she meant to save him. At other times, he had a suspicion that she actually liked everything she said she didn't. He could account for her one way or the other. It was himself he could not understand.
Yeah.
So I we don't get access to Sarah Ruth's internal state of mind the way we get it from Parker, but she is like drawn to him, even though like if my sister had brought this guy home, I would have told her to get rid of him, like this guy's a loser. Like what do you want to do with? But she's like drawn to him, like. And I think his suspicions is like it's like kind of correct. Like she actually might kind of like the tattoos, even though she says she doesn't, right? And even though he's continuing to say, I don't know why I would stay with this woman. Like she doesn't have anything I'm looking for. Like they're these two complete opposites that are drawn to each other, and it's it's a funny thing to watch. And it's also nice to watch it from the safe distance of a fictional account rather than these being people I actually have to interact with.
Yeah, and I think a part of it might be also that as I understand, like they were very poor, Sarah Ruth and her family, and so just by him bringing them some stuff to eat, like not even a huge feast, but just some apples and peaches, that cultivated a kind of dependent relationship that, like, on some level, maybe he shouldn't have done that, right? But he was looking for like a quick something, and then that spiraled out a little bit.
But when you meet these say these loser types who let's say make a insinuation to a virtuous woman and get rebuffed, they usually just like move on.
Well, but I don't think he's a loser at all. I mean, he's just a simpleton. Because it's not like he's not working. He's always
Mhm.
working. He's always doing something. He seems to be able to make money. He was
Yeah,
in the
right. It was said
military. Like,
he would buy a bushel of apples for $1 and then sell them for $1 a pound. Like that's actually he's filling a
right.
market need right there.
Mhm. No.
Right, and he went into the Navy, and that transformed him, like, the first time, right? So,
Yeah.
it's explicit there that he goes from being a renegade with no a rebel with no reason to into the Navy, only to fall back, prey to his passions. But I think it's very much the story of the perspective of the stupid man with the smarter woman. Uh, which, I mean, I gotta think there's a little bit of the author in here somewhere.
There's a well, even to your point, there's the line that says that his mouth stopped hanging open about 2 months into him being on the Navy. It's just
Right,
it
right.
still took that long, right? But
Yeah,
yeah,
he
I
gets
like the
formed in the military, right? Like, he's not formed until he gets into the military, and then he's formed, and now at least he's a useful member of society, even if he's a little dumb.
yeah. The to Gustav's point about the hunger thing, it says she took an apple quickly as if the basket might disappear if she didn't make haste. Then it says hungry people made Parker nervous. He had always had plenty to eat himself. It's like, then he kind of laments that he feels like he wasted the apples because he gave it to some hungry children.
Yeah, it really is the perspective of somebody who doesn't understand the world that they're in and isn't too concerned about it at the same
Mm.
time.
The another sort of really nice, I guess, exposition into his character I was when he goes and he goes back to his favorite artist, and the artist doesn't recognize him. Like he's gone to this guy for a lot of work, and the artist doesn't recognize him, and they have an argument, and he has to like explain who he is, and the artist says, "You've fallen off some. You must have been in jail." It says, "Married," Parker said. "Oh," said the artist, and then it says there were cheaper artists in town, but Parker had never wanted anything but the best. Right? It's just like the most discerning gentleman in one area, and only in the area where he was always dissatisfied after every single time.
Right.
I think we lost Father Eric.
We did. We lost Father Eric somehow. I guess his internet is not doing well. There
Yeah,
he's
my
back.
CPU usage is at 100%.
Mm.
Sounds like you have a
Eighth
virus.
generation i7. Yeah. I think Windows Defender's trying to do something, but it
Oh
looks like
no,
I'm back.
that's
So
always a bad sign.
yeah, maybe I'll
Also,
switch this machine over to Linux.
the
You might have
one-upmanship
to.
as well. There's the thing when he goes back and he returns to the house, right? And things immediately get turned against him in like the most horrific way. But it says he finally goes back, and it says he made as much noise as possible to assert that he was still in charge here. For his leaving her for a night without word meant nothing except it was the way he did things. It's like that's right before. That's like what 2 pages before he's no 4 pages before he's crying under a pecan tree. But it's just like yeah, it's that same thing over and over again. It's kind of that's the firework finale, I guess, of that pattern.
Yeah, the him trying to assert his, we'll say, male dominance or whatever, and then failing miserably, and no connection at all, right? Just reset. It's like a game reset. He's got a little save spot in his video game reality. He just gets back to the save spot again. Nothing's changed. And I think the part with the tattoo is really confusing for me because he said $10 a day it would take 2 days, and then Parker had $30. So it's
No,
not
no,
really clear to me what happened.
it was 10. It was 10 just as a base, whatever, thing to get in. And then it was 10 for each day. So it would have been 10 for the first day and then 10 for the second. So it's 30 overall,
Oh,
right?
I see. All right. Right, but then it seems like he pays him up front, and then the guy's like, "Don't forget to come back and pay me." And I was, so I
He only
not
paid him a
following.
down
I
payment.
didn't follow
He
any
only
of
gave
that.
him he gave him the $10, but he didn't give him the rest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah, there's also the thing about his tattoos just in general, that he's following the example of this circus guy, basically. And
right.
the circus guy is very impressive and kind of beautiful, and part of what is mentioned as being the appeal, or the thing that makes it so glamorous, is that it's this unified uh landscape kind of thingy of the whole circus guy's body. Whereas what our main character ends up with is uh is just a bunch of disconnected little pictures that he is upset that they actually don't arrive at that result of the unified landscape. And that seems like a picture of his life, that he wanted this grand journey or something, and he ends up having these uh little snapshots of just different stuff happening, and they don't really come together in any way.
Yeah, well, we don't get to see it come together, but it seems very obvious to me that everything from the tractor scene on, and this idea that he wants to get a tattoo that his wife will like that's all a transformation moment for him. And at this
Right.
point, like basically his entire body art is full, and so there's like a completeness and a crowning that comes when he puts the image of Christ on his back, and that might actually begin to tie all of the disparate things on his body together. uh, but the thing is that his wife is extremely Protestant, like not just your regular doses of Protestantism, but like ultra Anabaptist, taken to its logical conclusion Protestant. Um, but there's this insinuation, and like maybe Parker's actually right about this, that she actually kind of likes it and maybe hates herself for liking it in the same way that he hates himself for liking her. They're perfect for each other. I don't know, it's like, why are we confused that they would get together? Like this makes perfect sense. They're perfect for each other. And what kind of child are they going to have?
I think, and this is probably just projection, but maybe if she can convert this guy to her world, that would be like such a massive achievement. That would be that would justify like her whole existence or something, right? Like that's a big appeal for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, I think too. There's looking at it from the social commentary perspective, which I don't think we've really done yet. That this is talking about the dangers of iconoclasty, right? Like when you try to get rid of these things, they come back in force. And his whole narration is also all about him coming back, in force from something. Right? We don't know from what, but he's always coming back from some event that has befallen him, and he's like possessed by icons in the most physical way possible, right? And they drive his behavior such that I just want to read this because it's so good. So he's crashed into the tree. The tractor's on fire, right? He has no shoes because they're burning. Parker did not allow himself to think on the way to the city. He only knew that there had been a great change in his life, a leap forward into a worse unknown, and that there was nothing he could do about it. It was for all intents accomplished. And so, on the one hand, not interfacing with these icons means you'll basically be attracted to them and try to do something about them, which I think is Ruth's sort of attitude. Right. On the other hand, you can get possessed by them really easily. And now all of a sudden they're just driving your life entirely in your, we'll say, over adoption of them, which, I found that contrast interesting. It's not that I think it's more what, what was said earlier. Like for her, it's an accomplishment to civilize him or tame him. Right. It's not that she secretly likes the tattoos necessarily. I mean, we just don't have enough information. But it is this, oh no, this is a problem in the world that I can address. Which is always we'll say an interesting driver in the world. Right, to have that attitude about what can we do, what can't we do, what should we do, all of that.
Something I thought was interesting of this thing, he's always dissatisfied when he sees his tattoos and everything. But for this particular tattoo, the artist actually had to force him to look at it. He's making excuses when he's like, oh, take a look. He just spent 3 days working on this, and he said, take a look. And he says, that tattoo ain't going nowhere. It'll be there when I get there. And it's just like he doesn't want to see any of this. And the guy actually, grabs him and makes him look at it. And like he makes no comment. Like you almost get an impression that he's kind of, this might be his last tattoo. I mean, it's occupying the remaining space of his body, essentially. So it's like it's all been kind of tied together. And you have this line when he's looking at the book of designs, right? And it says, he on one of the pages, a pair of eyes glanced at him swiftly. Parker sped on, then stopped. His heart, too, appeared to cut off. There was absolute silence. It said as plainly as if silence were a language itself, go back. Right? And so it's like you have this thing where he's no longer, like, in a certain sense, he's still powerless. But there's also the sort of thing, like, he's also, like, there's kind of like a grace there, where it's just like, oh, he's normally just going in a direction and he's just doing whatever that thing is. It's not often that he's actually like grabbed and like, no, you're backtracking,
right,
type of thing. And like, that's the only time, like nothing really stops him from doing what he wants to do. He gets redirected, he gets shut down or whatever. But usually that's some sort of outside force that's doing that. When he's made up his mind about something, like he's going to get that chicken or whatever tattooed on his chest. But this one, it's like he actually kind of didn't want it in a certain sense, but it was just he just kind of like pointed at it and said, just like it is or nothing, and then he doesn't want to look at it anymore. And then of course when his wife starts beating him, like she's beating him on the tattoo, which is of course still sore probably, and he's like there on the tree, so it's like it's almost like his passion, like it's a crucifix, right? So it's like his passion is being crucified on him in a certain sense. I don't know. There's something really interesting about the way she tied it all together.
Yeah, there's definitely that deep symbolic religious stuff in that book I haven't read somewhere. But
even
there's definitely that motif there.
The eyes were the last thing that the artist put on too. And
right.
Yeah. And so like he was fine looking at it until the eyes were out there that he didn't want to look at it.
And I don't think he ever
There,
does.
there might be like a Saint Paul and Road to Damascus thing in there, right? Because like he falls off the tractor, and then like there's these eyes thingies. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
No, that's my contention of what is exactly is going on in this story. So I'll give you my take on it. Is that Parker is having a genuine religious experience here, and that the thing that's driving him to do this is actually the Holy Spirit, right? But the thing is that when the Holy Spirit goes into a fellow like Mr. Parker here, it's not going to come out the same way as it would in most people, just because he's not most people. He's a rather different fellow, and but part of what he really wants is he really wants Sarah to like him, and I think that's 100% sincere. Like he wants this tattoo to be like the way that he is going to make peace with his wife. It's like, okay, I have all of this past tattooed on me and you don't like it, but it's a picture of God and you love God, right? So like it's God on my back. And she's so Protestant, she can't look at an image of Christ and not see somehow it's idolatry. Um,
Mm.
and so there he's leaning against a tree, crying like a baby because, and this is really, this is maybe the hard part that made Castle sad. Is that when she sees that, it only makes her more angry at him and more of this like savage, cold. She says it right there. He don't look, Sarah Ruth said. He's a spirit. No man shall see his face. And so,
Right.
like reminder, Flannery O'Connor was a Catholic living in the South. She she saw these churches. She saw her own church. She read Thomas Aquinas. Like that's what's going on here. Is this the man who's got the world tattooed all over himself with Christ on his back comes and is rejected by this overly spiritual interpretation of and there's no incarnation in her thoughts. Even churches are idolatrous. Yeah.
Right.
But
Right.
he's like
Right. And that's
trying, so he's so earthly and she's so spiritual. Like if they could just find a way to meet in the middle, they'd be perfect for each other. Because he can go get the fruit and she'll correct some of his bad behavior. Like this should work out. But they're both too stubborn.
And it's
well,
interesting
yeah.
because
Well, yeah. I wanted to chime in with that's where poverty as piety comes in, especially in the South, right, and the Midwest, like because of the idolatry. So having things as such becomes bad when idolatry is taken too far, and then you get people, because Sally Joe talks about this all the time. This poverty is piety thing. That's where I got it. I got it from her, right? It's like it's the idolatry that slides you into that, where you're now no longer paying attention to the here and now, to the physical world. You're like, well, whatever, it'll all get worked out after we're dead, and then it won't really be worked out until like apocalypse or whatever, and then it'll be fine, right? And so you just be a good person, which totally makes no sense. But that's Baptist teaching for you. So that's what it ends up being. And so you can kind of understand where that comes from, and it has strange, like when it's done well, it's done really well. So like in the Northeast, there's no poverty as pie anywhere. The Puritans weren't like that at all. On the other hand, you walking down the street, you can't tell who has Mayflower money, right? Or Daughters of the American Revolution money, because that's a thing. That's a thing. The descendants of the Mayflower were controlling the entire economy of the United States for quite a while. I don't think they still do, but maybe because I don't know. But they, you couldn't tell because they integrated very well, and it really was like an equal playing field. But in the rest of the country, outside of the Northeast, and you only have to go down to like half of Connecticut the half that's controlled by the New Yorkers, before that's gone, right? And then everywhere else in the U.S., it's either ridiculous show off your wealth. That's New York City or New Amsterdam, more correctly, or it's poverty is piety, right? And it's very stark. So it only kind of worked for a relatively brief time period in one particular place.
I think, I mean, just my anecdotal observation is that the rich farmers and the doing okay farmers in North Dakota. You my back?
Now you're back.
Okay, whatever I had to say apparently wasn't all that important.
Something about farmers in South Dakota.
Rich farmers and the poor farmers
North Dakota.
in North
You can't tell the
Dakota,
rich
something.
pretty close to each other. Like they all buy new trucks every 2 years because it's a tax write-off. So
Well, they buy it from their farm bank, which they own part of and get a kickback for. So yeah,
it all works out.
Yeah, I think I don't know. It's just there's so much interesting stuff in here. I mean, I know we could probably dig for a long time. The line there about her not wanting, like, she actively doesn't want him to tattoo a Bible verse on there, right? Because she already has the Bible and she can just read that instead and everything. And of course, I mean, you always run into this sort of thing with like the icon thing where, like, St. Paul literally talks about like Jesus Christ being the icon of the invisible God and like those sorts of things. Like it's in the text. And I always wind up into that sort of frustration, the same as Mark with the Plato's Republic thing, like just always like it's in the text, but then just kind of the contrast with, completely rejecting it. And the fact that where she's beating him is directly on the face of Jesus on his back. Right. Like, and that it's
And no
actually,
blood.
yeah, it says that he sat there and let her beat him until she had nearly knocked him senseless, and large welts had formed on the face of the tattooed Christ. All right. So it's just like, yeah, you wind up just having that entire scene there. And, I don't know. It's also interesting because in a certain sense, it's like he's taking the hits for him, like you also to the point of the St. Paul thing where it's like, oh, why are you persecuting me? Right. And it's like, that's exactly what's happening. Like Parker's being the one being struck, but also like he's not the one being persecuted there.
Yeah, I don't think she says anything about the Bible verses. That's all his projection. There's a lot of his, because it's all his projection, right? He could hear her in his head say, right? And so it's not clear that she actually said that. It's more him thinking about what she would say, which is going to lead to disaster because he's a little dumb. So, right, and I think it does lead to disaster in some ways, and his way of engaging and understanding her is to try to bridge the gap between his world, which is the idolatrous world of too many tattoos, from around the world, to your excellent earlier point, Father, and her world of God, to his understanding, which he doesn't have much of an understanding, right? Because it's explicit sort of in the beginning that he's that he's not churched, right? He's not schooled in the churchy thing at all. So he's sort of meaning crisis and really dumb at the same time.
Yeah, you're totally right. By the way, I had read through thinking that she did say that, but no, he began to hear her say, like, it was all imaginary. Yeah, he could have gone for it.
Well, he's trying to stay control of the whole thing in his head, at least. So
Mm,
So that's also like where the projection of this stuff can happen.
yeah.
He probably would have liked it more if he had gotten the Bible verse.
Probably.
It's
But
yeah,
that wasn't what
potentially
he
true.
yeah, it's potentially true, but that wasn't what he needed to get tattooed on his back.
I also something I wanted to add as well, just kind of thinking of when we did our language of creation thing, you have this whole deal of like the woman raises the food and is kind of like the base with the body and everything, and then the man is supposed to lower heaven, and it's like so you have an exactly
Oh
upside
yeah.
down. So he's a backwards man, but also it's an upside down relationship. She's the
Mhm.
spiritual, she's informing, she's the one that demands to hear his name before she lets him in, right? Just all of these things. Like she is, completely in charge of heaven at that point, and he's the one that's providing the food. It says that he's rapidly losing weight because she just throws food in a pot and lets it boil.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
she
just
can't cook.
yeah. There's absolutely no so I mean even like she's skinny, so it's every lacking in corporeality versus he's all body, right? Like he never lacked anything to eat to the point where he's uncomfortable around hungry people. He's always got access to food. He seems to have not really much of a problem getting access to material resources, even money. If he can just throw it away on junk tattoos and only the best, of course. But it's like he has no issue with
And
that.
drinking and
Yeah,
gambling, and yeah, it's a miracle that he has any money at all. And yet he seems to do just fine, which
yeah.
there's a lot I think there's a lot of social commentary there too. Um
Mhm.
yeah, he doesn't understand, but he's very good at doing, and that just turns out to be fine materially. That's material for you.
And it's her mom's house, right? So he's living in her parents that they never move anywhere. Like the mom is there at one point and takes the rest of the apples without him giving consent, I think. But it's like yeah, and also the dad is away, right? So it's just like it is a 100% feminine run house, and then he's just kind of
Mm.
integrated into this existing structure. So it's just the entire thing is completely not what you would traditionally expect from that type of arrangement.
Yeah, boy, that yeah, your comments about the inversion, I think, are very very on point there. I don't know what to make of it. So something about Parker is actually right somehow. He just really stinks at explaining and leading. So, and he's not well equipped to do so at this time.
Hmm.
Well,
And it's really funny that we
it's
keep on
just
calling him Parker when that's his last name. It should also be Sarah Ruth's last name as well, Mrs.
Mhm.
Parker.
Yeah, she never takes
yeah.
on his name.
Yeah, well, we don't see it anyway.
Hmm.
Well,
And it's
there
coming
are
from
no other
his
people in
perspective.
Parker's world.
Yeah.
Right. There's no other people in his world at all. There's really just kind of him and then all the things around him that drive him. It's very materialistic. But I think the inversion's important, right? Because one of the things you're sort of showing with the inversion is that it's not a normal relationship, but it can be made to work. I mean, they're having a kid, so right. But that flaw in the relationship shows up basically at the end. But I think there's a strong hint that this guy's a masochist. I don't and she's perfectly happy to play sadist apparently because I don't see any other way around it. Like it because at every turn there's this right, but again, you get that sense for the female cleverness and drawing him in, and even though, yeah, I mean, this is the most unlikely union in the history of the universe, or at least storyverse. What's going on? But because it's inverted, that's what makes the unlikeliness work. At least to the extent that it does, and that's the other thing too. It's very it's very just a series of scenes. Rick, there's no story thread at all. It's not told in order. Right? Like It's always a red flag for me. Why
I
aren't you
was the one
telling
who
us
put
in
it in order for you.
chronological order? Right. Right,
Yeah.
but I don't think his life goes in order. Like, I think he
Mhm.
lives like that movie Memento, which is an excellent film, by the way. Like he just kind of strings things together willy-nilly as he can, right? And then waits for the revelation to come, and it does. Right. The first transformation was the Navy, and then the second transform a while in, and then the second transformation is this idea of how to integrate the two worlds. So he's no longer unhappy with his wife and his life, right? And then the only way to do it is through the suffering, effectively, right? Which is that's the sort of high contrast way to fix or integrate the relationship.
The you see the sort of fall in the garden parallel. So when he's there working, so he's a gardener, right, for this old woman. Once again, he's got, the authority over him is a lady who also hates him. Essentially, I think it says something like she looked at him the same way she looked at his at her tractor, which is that it's all that she has. Um, and she just kind of had to put up with it. But it says the old woman was the kind who would not cut down a large old tree because it was a large old tree. She had pointed it out to Parker as if he didn't have eyes, and told him to be careful not to hit it. But there's an interesting sort of thing of like, there's a tree in the center of the garden. Don't do anything with it, And
Yep.
then you kind of have this thing where he winds up he in a certain sense loses the support of the earth, right? So his shoes come flying off and then catch on fire, and then the tree catches on fire. So it's like, well, I can't go back, right? And then he just runs away and drives immediately all the way into town. So it's just, there's a very interesting sort of
To
like,
cover the nakedness on his back.
yeah, and then kind of like a salvation history type of microcosm going on there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's an aspect of again of like the family that comes to my mind about how there is this conflict between them, and there's a lack of loyalty and the inversion, right? There's like he's still Parker is living in the house of a Baptist preacher. That's where he's living in, and she's still the daughter of that, and the loyalty is kind of still there. Like he's an addition to this household that already exists, because if the father had been dead, then there would be like a handoff. There would be a change of loyalty, or however you put it, and then that would kind of put things in the right order or something. But that's not there, and I see that a lot actually. Um,
I just found this line. So when he gets to the artist's place, he has no shoes, and it says the artist had two large cluttered rooms over a chiropodist's office, so like at a podiatrist's office. And it says Parker, still barefooted, burst in silently on him at a little after 3 in the afternoon. So it's like he goes in, lost the support of the earth. He goes upstairs barefoot past the guy who does stuff for people's feet. Doesn't bother to cover his feet or anything like that, and then goes up at about 3 p.m. to get a crucifix on his back. Is just kind of She just kind of throws a lot of these things in there that are just kind of like right under the radar.
Yeah, and then the tattoo artist doesn't recognize him, even though he's the best in town, and Parker will only get the best. So like you could already see that transformation is already accomplished. Parker did not allow himself to think on the way to the city. He only knew that there had been a great change in his life, a leap forward into a worse unknown, and that there was nothing he could do about it. It was, for all intents, accomplished. He had the very worst thing that could have ever happened to him already accomplished, even though we don't get to see the rest of the story. He had become a Christian. And in his own way, he began practicing how he knew how. And that was getting another tattoo. So that's what I think is kind of driving him, honestly, is this the workings of grace in his life, but he's not an ordinary guy, so you're not going to see the grace working in an ordinary way in him. But that might be something to pay attention to in further
Yeah.
readings, because that was my thesis also about the stranger and a good man, or the misfit, the good man who's hard to find. I have yet to convince Mark of that, but if you prefer to think of him just as a masochist rather than somebody being drawn to the thing that can save him, Mark, then just go ahead and keep on thinking that.
I believe Parker is. I'm not sure about the misfit, but I want to something actually to your point. Thinking about Parker's like drawn to the sun, like he's on the tractor, and it's as if he has eyes in the front and in the back of his head, and he's just kind of staring off into space. And way before that, there's a part right after the point where it says hungry people made him nervous, where it says long views depress Parker. You look out into space like that and you begin to feel as if someone were after you, the Navy or the government or religion. And it's like, yeah, just to that point of like, yeah, he's getting kind of, almost like looking into the abyss, and it's looking back.
Yeah, so the Navy or the government
When
or
there's a
religion.
hierarchy too.
Yeah.
Yeah, all hierarchy, all things bigger than him, all constraints, all things that have some form of agency, right? All things that we'll say rebels don't like, because they're rebels, not for any good reason.
But like by the end, like I'm genuinely convinced that he really wanted to impress Sarah. Like this was something he was doing for her,
Oh yeah.
Parker's another picture, Sarah Ruth Gerald. I might have known it was you off putting some more trash on yourself. Look at it. Don't just say that. Look at it. I done look. Don't you know who it is? No, who is it? It ain't anybody I know. It's him. You know. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a nice thing about these short stories is we don't have to see how they end. We always get left off in the middle.
The pattern, yeah, the pattern in the story is very much one of him complaining about a situation and then going headlong into the situation he's complaining about, knowing full well it won't work out for him. So that's the masochism, because he did, like, that pattern's everywhere. It's just you have it ramps up throughout the story until you get it there, right? And then it's because again he's trying to integrate. I mean, it's explicit in some sense. I mean, it's not explicit in language, we'll say, but it's explicit in the structure and sequence of that part of the story at the end where it actually gets sequential. Thank goodness we catch up to current day. Where he basically says like, oh, I keep wanting to leave her and I can't leave her, right? I don't understand how this can work because I don't like pregnant women who can't cook, and whatever other nonsense he's complaining about. And his solution is to change himself for the first time, right? So in a way he's become self-aware in a certain way, right? And then he only has one lever there, which is tattoos, right? And he doesn't want to conform to no words. So obviously the wife wouldn't be too happy with words because, well, what would be the point, right? But she doesn't say that. He says that, right? And then it's like, oh, well, what am I gonna do? And he figures it out. Aha! I will get the one thing that she is attracted to the most as part of me, and then that will integrate us. And the fact that all these other things remain, she's still going to be pregnant for a little while anyway, right? She's still not going to be able to cook, and I guess she's not too good looking or good looking enough for him. And she's certainly not his type either. That gets established early. Like, this isn't my type. My type's the kind of woman who wouldn't look at me unless I had tattoos. Then they're all over me, right? And so, he's finally kind of solved the puzzle in a sense, at least in his own head. And the solution is that, but all it leads to is more of the same pattern, because he's dumb. He's really just, this guy's not very bright at the end of the day.
Which was, the common complaint against Catholics by the Baptists and their forebears, is that this was all just idolatry and superstition. This was all just sensual nonsense that only people who are very carnal and close to the earth could ever believe. And people who were more spiritual and intellectual understood that you didn't need these signs to mediate things, but you would just read the Bible and understand these things.
Well, and also the personal
From the
relationship
low IQ crowd.
aspect. There's the idea that if you have a personal relationship with God, then like, what are these pictures about, or something? And so maybe
Right.
maybe she's kind of not criticizing, but she doesn't see that in Parker, the personal relationship.
Right. Well, Parker himself
Well,
says, if a guy can't save himself, then I don't give him any real stock.
Right. Very individualist, but I think she has a connection to him. It's him trying to make a connection to her that's the real problem. Like, he's stuck in the intimacy crisis for sure, because he just doesn't know how to integrate himself with anything in the world anywhere. Like, because he's just rebel, right? And the only way to do it is to make him suffer, which, presumably, I think, Father, you're right there. Like, it works. Like, he in a sense converts, and that completes his conversion into submission, basically, in this case, to her, but not really to her, or not only to her, right? But to also to to religion in some sense. The thing he was, one of the things he was worried about having to conform to. And so I think when you sort of look at it at that symbolic layer, you sort of realize that it's a weird inversion in the story, right? It's the symbolism in the story that makes it work, but it's that, we'll say, flattened propositional idea of personal relationship that Gustav pointed out that obviously doesn't work, which is why the Protestants, like, it's just me and God, man. We don't need any of this other stuff. And again, that leads to poverty as piety all by itself, but it also leads to propositional tyranny, right? You getting rid of a bunch of tools that you kind of need, right? And that's why to some extent people are streaming back into the churches. I was just listening to Jonathan Peugeot said that, basically make that point on a video earlier today. So he did one with Martin Shaw. Martin Shaw's channel is called Jawbone, I think. But yeah, it was interesting. Like, yeah, you're missing all this stuff, and now it's available, right? And from the story perspective, there was no side-by-side interaction until the end, right? It's always him reflecting on her, or talking about her when she's not there, or projecting her image into the story until the end of the story. And then basically the perspective switches. And at the very end of the story, it's no longer his perspective, because he can't see himself crying like a baby, right? Like if you're stuck in your head and you're crying, and especially if you've just been beaten, that ain't the description you're given ever. Right? And so she very cleverly, it's a literary trick. She very cleverly takes the perspective and changes it at the very end, modifying it as it goes, right? Because he's getting more interactive with the outside world as the story goes on. And so you really get that sense through the writing that that the transformation is happening to the narrator, until finally there's now another narrator in the story. I wonder who that could be, right? And so,
Yeah.
right. And so, yeah, it implies strongly at the end that the quote transformation is complete. We just don't know what it
And
looks
he's
like
accepted.
beyond what we get.
He's accepted his name, right? There he was, who called himself Obadiah Elihu, leaning against the tree, crying like a baby, a newborn baby, a new man.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's two paragraphs that that I highlighted that I think do a really good job of kind of showing. Oh, sorry, yeah, that. I'm gonna.
No. I just had a revelation, but I'll hold on
Oh,
to
okay,
it.
okay, sorry. I thought it was bedtime. The
No,
but the so there's
still
yeah,
bright outside.
I don't know what your schedule is. The So there's this part right where it stops being individualistic, and it says he longed miserably for Sarah Ruth. Her sharp tongue and ice pick eyes were the only comfort he could bring to mind. He decided he was losing it. Her eyes appeared soft and dilatory compared to the eyes in the book, for even though he could not summon up the exact look of those eyes, he could still feel their penetration. He felt as though under their gaze he was as transparent as the wing of a fly. And then you get to the, was it fourth or fifth to last page, at least on Kindle, and when she's asking who's there, like she knows it's him, but she's demanding that he says his name, and it says Parker turned his head as if he expected someone behind him to give the answer. The sky had lightened slightly, and there were 2 or 3 streaks of yellow floating above the horizon. Then, as he stood there, a tree of light burst over the skyline. So you've got also this sort of contrast between the tree he set on fire by accident and then this sort of tree of light. And then he says his name, and it says, and all at once he felt the light pouring through him, turning his spiderweb soul into a perfect arabesque of colors, a garden of trees and birds and beasts.
And wasn't that the same word used to describe the tattoos of the circus guy in the beginning, arabesque?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then when Parker was putting on all these tattoos, it said that they were all these different. It describes all these animals, the panthers and the snakes and the hawk and everything are constantly at war. But now his spiderweb soul has been turned into a perfect arabesque of colors, a garden of trees and birds and beasts. So it's like there is integration has happened, despite the fact that he's got this really eclectic, just kind of smattering together of things on him. It's like his soul has been put in order.
And he got baptized. Castle. How did he get baptized?
Desire?
Nope. Blood. I mean, not quite blood.
Don't you have to die for that? I mean, yeah, I could see that. But
right, no, he's literally suffering for the image of Christ that he has tattooed on his back.
Yeah, so I thought you had to die for baptism of desire, but yeah, fair enough.
Look, this is a fictional story. This isn't a process for canonization. We don't need to do this with canonical rigor, right?
Folks are my friends.
Right? Like he suffers for the Christ he has tattooed on his back, and at that point he's described as a baby. So he's had the illumination of his conscience. He gets the baptism by blood, or maybe just the ink from his freshly tattooed back coming out, and then he's a new creation by that point. It's been completed. Now, if this was real life, I would, of course, pour the water over his head or dunk him according to the customs of the place. But Flannery O'Connor knew about the baptism by blood, all right? And even if she wasn't thinking about it, she put it in here. And I think that's a good place to wrap up, unless anybody has any final parting shots. All right. Well, I was talking to a friend of mine about Flannery O'Connor, and he mentioned that he had read and appreciated The Temple of the Holy Ghost. So that'll be the one that we read next, whenever I decide to do this again. So thank you for participating. I hope you all enjoyed this, and God bless you all. Good night for Gustav's, I think. It's probably pretty late there.
Yes.